Over 25 years ago, Honda was one of the first manufacturers to introduce a small crossover called the CR-V. Now, while the CR-V was one of the first small crossovers, Honda was technically one of the last manufacturers to introduce an electrified version called the CR-V Hybrid back in 2020. Now, for 2023, there's an all-new version of the CR-V. We've already had a chance to show you guys a full review of the gas model known as the EXL. However, this week, Honda has flown us out to just outside of Santa Barbara, California to drive the electrified version. This is the 2023 CR-V Sport Touring. It only comes as a hybrid this year, so if you guys have had your eye on the fully redesigned CR-V and you wanted to know what the hybrid is like, stay tuned because we're about to find out. So because this review is more about the CR-V hybrid, let's go ahead and talk about what's underneath the hood, because unlike the red model that we drove a couple months ago in Nashville, this is the Sport Touring grade, which means it comes standard with their new flagship powertrain for the CR-V. It's Honda's latest generation of their two-motor hybrid system. It pairs a 2-liter Atkinson cycle, naturally aspirated, direct injected 4-cylinder. The direct injection is new this year. The previous generation didn't have that. The engine on its own makes 145 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. It's augmented by twin electric motors. This is not a plug-in hybrid, so it just has a small lithium-ion battery pack. When you combine the outputs of the electric motor and the gas engine, it makes 204 horsepower and 247 pound-feet of torque. That's a pretty big jump in the torque figure compared to the 1.5 gas engine. However, compared to the old CR-V hybrid, some of you may be wondering, it actually went down in power. That had 212. It didn't. In 2022, Honda updated the way that they calculate horsepower, so that old model actually had 201 horsepower. So this has 3 more horsepower and it has about 13 more pound-feet of torque. That torque figure is definitely going to help with that day-to-day feel. It all goes out through an eCVT with technically it kind of behaves like a reduction gear single-speed transmission, but Honda says it has 2 speeds, but it also behaves like a CVT, an eCVT when you're driving in hybrid mode. Front-wheel drive is actually going to be standard now on the hybrid. The previous generation came standard with all-wheel drive. If you want all-wheel drive, it's about a $1,500 option. The Sport Touring here comes standard with the company's all-wheel drive system. It actually has a physical connection between the engine and the rear drive shaft, which is different versus what Toyota does with the RAV4, which just has a separate E-axle at the back that gives you all-wheel drive. Now, fuel economy, this is where the CR-V, Honda was able to improve it. If you guys go for the front-wheel drive model, those are rated at 43 in the city, 36 on the highway, about 40 combined. It runs on regular gas. The all-wheel drive version drops to 40 in the city, 34 highway, 37 combined. That's actually 1 mpg less in the combined figure and highway figure compared to the previous generation. So that's kind of disappointing, but it's going to be probably the same fuel economy. The new CR-V hybrid is now rated to tow up to 1,000 pounds. Honda didn't claim any 0 to 60 performance figures. We'll strap it along to our equipment and see what we can get. And in terms of the curb weight, the new CR-V is a little bit heavier. It's about 100 pounds heavier at just over 3,900 pounds. But let's go ahead and close the hood and talk about the styling, because when I showed you guys the EXL, I was pretty disappointed with how basic that car looked, considering the fact that EXL is 1 notch before the top of the line trim. The hybrid version only comes as the Sport and the Sport Touring. This is the Sport Touring painted in Canyon River Blue Pearl, which is a new color this year. It's a kind of a grayish blue. It has beautiful metallic fleck in the sunlight, but it's a little bit too dark for me. For those of you who prefer a little bit more of an intense blue, you can see the front styling of the CR-V has Honda's new corporate design language. They've been busy redesigning all their SUVs. It has a kind of a more pilot-like front end with this large grille with the gloss black finish. You have full LED headlights you can see with the reflector style, LED low and high beams, LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals. No fog lights down here. It almost looks like exhaust tips, but this silver trim is unique to the Sport and Sport Touring grade, which again gives it more of an aggressive look with the kind of hexagonal air intake openings. You got front parking sensors. But overall, the CR-V to me looks a little bit more sophisticated, looks a little bit more premium, looks a little bit more masculine. So I like the styling direction that Honda has gone here. Now, in terms of the structure, this is built off of their global architecture, which is similar to the one that's in the CR-V, but Honda has made structural changes, or the Civic, but they've made structural changes to enhance the CR-V's performance. The platform itself, they say, is 15% stiffer in torsional rigidity, and it continues to use a 4-wheel independent suspension. No adaptive dampers, but they did make the new CR-V larger. The wheelbase has grown by about 1.5 inches. The overall length has grown by nearly 3 inches, so this is almost 185 inches long. It's one of the longer entries in the segment, and Honda has also made this car about 1/2 inch wider. So again, it gives it a bigger stance. It's going to also give it more interior space. Now, in terms of the wheels, I complained a lot about the EX and EXL's wheels because those had an 18-inch wheel with like a silvery finish. This Sport Touring fixes that with a 19-inch wheel. You can see it's wrapped in 235 55 R19 Continental all-season tires. These are the largest wheels that Honda has ever put on a CR-V, which definitely fills out the wheel wells nicely. You also have this gloss black finish on the Sport Touring version. If you go for a Sport, it'll drop it down to an 18-inch wheel with the same gloss back finish. You can see there's these plastic body cladding along the wheel arches over here, and the CR-V's ground clearance should be around just under 8 inches, so it's pretty comparable to the previous generation. It's not going to be designed for really capable off-roading, but it should get you where you need to go, such as a gravel parking lot, for example. Now over here you can see the side mirrors have an integrated turn signal. They're black painted, and then the Sport version also gives you black painted roof rails on the Sport Touring. Sadly, no panoramic sunroof. That's something that Honda still refuses to do on the CR-V. You can get that on some competitors. I would have liked to see them also black out the window trim over here. It just doesn't look good with the black mirrors and the black roof rails. This also should have been blacked out. I imagine some people are probably going to change that on their own. And then looking at the rear of the vehicle, you can see the styling is instantly recognizable as a CR-V. You've got an LED combination rear taillight design, which you can see here, the brake light and taillight is LED, reverse light's LED. However, the turn signal, as you can see, is incandescent. So that's kind of a step down compared to the previous generation. I wish that Honda had kept the full LEDs. Down over here you can see it's got a Sport Touring badge. The Sport badge is black, while the Touring badge is chrome. I don't like the inconsistency there. I would have preferred if Honda just did an all black gauge display. There's also, or all black emblems. There's also an all-wheel drive sticker here on the back window, which reminds us a lot of the first generation CR-V, along with this rear view, or this rear wiper. You have this integrated spoiler, which looks a little bit nicer. And then there's also a subtle hybrid badge back here. That's the only way you're going to be able to tell this is a hybrid, because of that hybrid badge, along with these nicely integrated dual exhausts. You also have these rear parking sensors. And then down here you can see this is an unpainted finish for the rear bumper area. Now in terms of the cargo space, this is where Honda definitely made some improvements. The old CR-V already had one of the largest cargo areas in the segment. They've made it larger for 2023 by about 3 cubic feet. So with the second row seats up, there's no third row in this car, you get just over 36 cubic feet of total space, which is definitely nice. If you want to fold down these seats, there's no release back here, which is kind of disappointing. So you kind of have to reach in and push that forward, which if you do that, if I'm tall enough, no, too short. Oh, thank you, Rob. If you do that, you can see this expands it out to 76 cubic feet of space. Again, that's an increase of 3 cubic feet. I want you to notate something though, however. This floor is not completely level and flat. There's actually a pretty decent sized hump over here, and I suspect it's because the battery pack is taking up space here. I don't remember the gas model to have that quite large of a hump area. Thankfully, it is still very usable, but that's something to keep in mind if you need a completely flat load area. I have seen that a little bit better in some competitors. You can't actually lift this up anymore for some reason. I'm not entirely sure if it's a pre-production car. You can see if I start to pull this out, it starts to loosen that, so we're not going to do that. There is no spare tire on this car. Instead, you just have this area here where you can see there is a fix-a-flat kit over there. So for those of you who want a spare, you may want to look into adding that as an accessory. So moving into the interior of the 2023 CR-V Sport Touring. Now, as you guys saw, the exterior is definitely handsome, but this is where you're going to be spending most of your time. So when you get in here and shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk, which doesn't surprise me. It has, this is built off of an enhanced global architecture that's built on the same Civic platform. Now, here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see this is Honda's latest key fob. The Sport Touring includes their intelligent access key. You have lock, unlock, there's a remote start feature. You can also open up the power liftgate and a panic button. You should be able to also use the Hondalink app and use or access this vehicle via your smartphone, but I don't have access to that since this is a press car. The button to fire up the engine is over here. And once you put your foot on the brake, push that button, you can hear this starts up differently, obviously, versus the 1.5 turbo that I tested a couple months ago because of the hybrid system. It kind of just whirs to life. You hear the gas engine come on, but there are also maybe times like right now where the engine shuts off and you don't even hear any noise. Instead, it just says ready in the instrument panel. Now, the one thing you're going to notice about this Sport Touring here, this is the fully loaded model, but Honda doesn't actually put the fully digital display in here. You can see this is the half digital, so the left side of the screen is digital, where it kind of gives you a power meter. You can kind of customize that slightly. The other side is a traditional analog speedometer, and that's really surprising to me considering this is the fully loaded version. You can get an all digital cluster in something like the Honda Civic Touring. So Unusual cost cutting for me, and I'll be curious to know why Honda decided to do that. But in terms of the seats, you can see these are the leather bucket seats that you get on the Sport Touring. You can see it's black with this orange stitching. Now, I haven't had a chance to ask Honda as of this filming. I will ask them later and find out, can you get a different color with the Sport Touring? I'm not entirely sure. Honda's only shown it with this kind of black with the orange stitching. I know in the EXL you can get like a gray leather, but I wouldn't be surprised if Honda is only offering a black interior for the Sport and the Sport Touring trim. In terms of the rest of the door panels here, you can see the upper portion is a soft touch injection molded plastic. There's some interesting texture here with this kind of hexagonal texture in the piano black plastic. The door handle here is silver accented. The window controls, they're also silver accented, and they feel really high quality. There's just something very clicky about the buttons that's almost very European-like. Honda is very proud of that. The rest of this interior, you can see the dash layout is pretty similar to the new CR-V and the new HR-V, where you have this continuous vent over here, although it's technically 3 separate vents, but it has kind of like this metal grill cover for the actual air vents. They're shaped in hexagons, more hexagon pattern here that's carried over from the door panel. You can see this portion of the dash is a soft touch injection molded plastic, and then you have this 9-inch touchscreen over here that has their latest Hondalink. As you saw earlier, it has wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. There is no heads-up display on the CR-V. Sadly, they don't offer that. But there is now a 12-speaker Bose stereo system in this car. I cranked it up earlier. It sounds pretty good. Huge improvement over the old 9-speaker Honda Premium system. This now has 12 speakers, and it's just nice to see Honda's finally upgrading their audio system now. In terms of the steering wheel, you can see this is the same steering wheel that we've seen on the new Civic. The Sport Touring adds a heated steering wheel element, so there's a little button here where you can turn the heated wheel on or off. It also has manual tilt and telescoping adjustment, and offers a pretty good amount of adjustability and range. The horn, sounds awful. Super puny horn that kind of sounds like it was pulled right off of the Civic, so I imagine some owners are probably going to want to change that right away. In terms of some creature comforts, the seats, the driver's seat is an 8-way power adjustment, which is nice. You have 2-person memory and 2-way lumbar support. The passenger seat, however, is just a 4-way power with no lumbar, so you can't actually adjust the height. That's kind of, again, some cost cutting. The seats are also 3-level heated, but no ventilated seats. Super sad to see Honda's not offering ventilated seats, in addition to no panoramic sunroof. But over here on the center stack, you can see very nice clicky buttons and knobs that you get with the dual zone climate control, which feels nice. This is pretty much the same layout that we find in the new Civic. Down here you can see wireless phone charging pad, which offers up to 15 watts of power. I found that my phone was kind of finicky and it wasn't always charging when I placed it on the pad, but it's also a nice large area where you can put your larger iPhones or your larger smartphones. The center stack here you can see has your drive mode selector. There are 3 or 4 different drive modes on the hybrid. There's a sport, normal, econ, and a snow mode. We'll talk about all those later on during the driving scene. You have an electronic parking brake here. There's a new downhill assist feature here that limits the vehicle's speed. They call it hill descent control between 2 to 12 miles an hour. So that's actually a new feature for when you're off-roading your CR-V. I don't imagine a lot of owners are going to do that, but again, it adds a nice little safety element here. This controls the ECVT. It's actually, I'm surprised to see it's a traditional shifter. I think the old CR-V had push buttons or a toggle. So for those of you who prefer a traditional shifter, you'll like the fact that they did that here. You can see there's your backup camera. It has 3 different views. Again, no 360 camera. That's something that you can find on some competitors, but you do have rear cross traffic alert, and the resolution's been upgraded. It's a higher definition display, but again, it's a little bit behind the times. There's a reason why Honda saves a lot of these features for Acura and they don't want to offer it on the CR-V. But let's talk a little bit about this system. You can see it's relatively quick and snappy and responsive. I touch a button here, you can see it quickly changes. You can also see there's the Hondalink system. There is embedded GPS in this car, which is nice. You cannot get that in something like the Civic, for example, but most of you probably won't even use the factory navigation. You'll just kind of pair up your smartphone and you'll use that instead. You can see the factory nav is perfectly fine, but you can see there it's a little bit laggy to load up the rest of the map display over there. But overall, because this is the hybrid, you can see there's also a power flow screen here that shows you where the energy is going, what your current MPG is, what the range is. It shows you how much battery power you have left over there as well. Pushing that home display, you can see you can go in here into some of your different settings. This also has a wireless hotspot, where you can pay for a subscription plan to actually have this vehicle be a rolling mobile hotspot, which is definitely nice. It's what you expect nowadays. And then down over here, you can see you've got your 2 cup holders. You have a nice padded center console area. And then if you open this up, you can see there, this is a relatively deep storage compartment, but no power outlets or USBs. The USBs are going to be over here where you've got a USB-A and a USB-C charging port. Now, above me, you can see here, this model has the sunroof, which is standard. It's just the standard moonroof that opens and closes. You can also tilt it. It's nice that they give you that as standard on most of the higher trims. And there's also a manual shade, but again, huge missed opportunity for Honda to not offer a pano roof. You do have LED map lighting over here. There's a auto dimming rearview mirror here with more of like a frameless, cleaner design. But again, Honda doesn't offer anything like a digital camera rearview mirror, at least not on the any Honda product. And then over here in the glove compartment, you can see it's kind of on the smaller end. It's a bin style, it's damped, but it's not lined with felt. But overall, the visibility in here is good. There's a really nice feeling of openness and airiness, which a lot of buyers are gonna like. And the CR-V has most of the tech that you'd want. It just also has some cost cutting that I'm really confused about, and I think that Honda needs to kind of get with the program and offer some of those premium upscale features. Now, hopping into the back seat of the redesigned CR-V, this is where Honda gave us more space back here, about 0.6 more inches of legroom, which means this is one of the biggest back seats in the segment, and you also have seat backs that recline. Actually, it reclines a pretty generous amount, which is nice for those of you who plan to have people back here to sit on longer trips. If you also fold the seat down, you can see the seat bottom cushion actually comes down, but as you also notice, it has a rather large hump over here where it's not quite a flat floor area. So that's kind of an interesting thing that I'm noticing about this hybrid version. But getting back here, you can see legroom, Honda claims, is generous at 41 inches. 41 inches would make this the biggest back seat in the segment by the numbers. And I will tell you that this is a very spacious back seat. For somebody like me who's 5'7", I can literally stretch out back here. I can kind of cross my legs, which is nice. I have a floor that's basically completely flat, which is nice. This Sport Touring includes rear seat air vents. You have 2 USB-C charging ports, which is nice, but not your own separate rear temperature controls. Back here, the door panels you can see are sadly hard touch plastic with more of that piano black trim. There is padded leather over the armrest area, which is nice, and then there's some storage pockets over here. No rear window sunshades. Wasn't really expecting that in this segment. If you fold this down, you can see there is an armrest that gives you 2 cup holders. Sadly, no heated rear seats. I was expecting to find that. Some competitors offer that, but not Honda. And then, like I said earlier, if it had a pano roof, this would be a lot nicer and letting in some more light. But you can see for somebody like me, headroom space is very good. If you're 6 foot, it should also be decent as well, but this kind of cutout here makes the headroom space feel a little bit more roomy. But overall, the back seat is definitely nice, but I just wish that Honda would have thrown in heated back seats and your own set of temperature dial controls. All right, so here we are back in the redesigned 2023 CR-V. However, this time, Rob and I are finally driving the hybrid version. We were in Nashville a couple months ago and we drove the gas-only turbo engine, and we weren't that impressed with that. That kind of actually made Rob very sad because you guys know how much he loves CR-Vs and Hondas. But anyways, we're in the hybrid version. This has 204 horsepower. Let's see what we can get 0 to 60 in this thing. Brake torque it slightly. Ah, when you brake torque it, it doesn't shift. Interesting. 7.59 seconds.
It's a hell of a lot better than 9 point whatever.
Yeah, I think we got 9.7 or something. It was almost 10 seconds in the 1.5 turbo, which was hugely disappointing considering the old CR-V turbo was probably around that speed for the 1.5 and CVT. So this is significantly better. And earlier today, we were driving this car without me brake torquing it, and it will constantly mimic shifts. This has an eCVT. It kind of functions as a 2-speed reduction gear transmission kind of, but it also feels like a stepped automatic. Like when I put my foot down here, you can hear the engine actually starts to increase the revs. However, right now it's actually not shifting, which is interesting how it's not actually shifting.
You weren't really driving flat out there either, were you, when it was doing mimicking shifts?
Correct, I wasn't. I was kind of just driving it like how a normal person would drive their CR-V. But let's go ahead and see what we can get here really quick. There is a car coming, so we'll wait. All right, run 2. Let's see what we can get this time. Brake torque it. Still not mimicking shifts, but 7.39 there. That's pretty respectable. Now that was going slightly more downhill versus earlier, so Honda didn't quote a 0 to 60 time for this car, but mid 7-second range is pretty much what I think that they should be benchmarking, because this is where something like the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid sits, and this is probably enough power for most people. So it's nice to see obviously the acceleration improve in the hybrid version versus the turbo CVT that you can also get. But just keep in mind, other competitors offer a plug-in hybrid with more power. Honda doesn't offer that still in the CR-V, at least in North America. But overall, the hybrid powertrain, Honda definitely made it a lot more refined this year. The engine itself also is designed to be a little bit less intrusive. For example, put my foot down here. It almost has a really interesting sound to it, but there are times where this eCVT, this transmission, will kind of mimic shifts, and it kind of gives you the impression that you're driving a traditional stepped automatic, which some of you may prefer, some of you may not prefer that. I do like the tuning of this. Now, how does it compare to something like the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid? I would need to drive the two back to back, but I will say that the Honda system feels very different than the Toyota system, in the way it delivers the power and the way it drives. But they both have pretty similar acceleration. Now, in terms of fuel economy, I'll have to wait until I get one to test for a week, but it should be notated, I mentioned this earlier, fuel economy actually went down by 1 mpg versus the old CR-V, and remember, now you can get a front-wheel drive model which gets about 3 mpg better than the all-wheel drive version, but Honda sadly doesn't have any front-wheel drive models in hybrid form for us to drive. All of them are pretty much the Sport Touring, which comes standard with all-wheel drive. Now, they also do offer a braking mode here in the transmission. It's called B for regen braking. Honda in their presentation was calling it like one-pedal drive. It's definitely not one-pedal drive, but you can adjust the regen here with the paddle shifters, and when you have it on max, there's 4 levels. This is in max regen right now. It slows it down a fairly decent amount. I'd say it's comparable to the regen braking that I feel in like the Toyota RAV4 Prime when you have it in sport mode. It's not as strong, however, as the regen braking that I felt in like some of the Volvo plug-in hybrids or the Jeep Wrangler 4xe that has a regen mode or one-pedal drive mode. So I kind of would have preferred Honda to give us a little bit stronger regen. I think they could have done that easily, but you guys tend to know Honda can be a little bit conservative sometimes with the way they design and build their vehicles. But we're actually going to go find some twisty roads up ahead, and we're going to see how the new CR-V handles, because remember, this is built on their enhanced global architecture, although they have made a couple of changes to make this car feel a little bit stiffer and a little bit more unique compared to a Civic that's also built on this platform. All right, just for consistency, we're going to do it one more time. I'll drive it. I'll have it in D mode this time with it in sport. We'll brake torque it. Not for too long, though, because it didn't like that. Yeah, that one was actually slower. Now, this time we were going apparently slightly more uphill, but out of our 3 runs, we got 7.6, 7.4, and 8.17, 8.2. So I'll be sure to retest this car when we have it back home in our local area. But overall, I think most people should be pretty pleased with the acceleration of the hybrid. It is definitely a huge improvement over the base 1.5 liter turbo engine. But I was playing with the drive, or I haven't shown you guys the different drive modes yet. There is normal, Eco, Snow, and then Sport. Now, obviously, Snow is only if you're going to be in the snowy areas. In Eco mode, it really tailors everything back to try to get better gas mileage. Most of you will probably drive it in normal. This car does not have adaptive dampers, so it doesn't actually change the way the suspension feels, but you do feel that the steering gets a little bit heavier in Sport mode versus normal mode and versus Econ mode. The CR-V in general has always been more of a sportier driving entry in the segment. Honda always likes to favor driving enthusiastic driving, and the CR-V certainly feels that way. The stiffer, or the structure of this car, Honda says, is about 15% stiffer, and it definitely feels like an upscale car. I mean, this is clearly a mainstream vehicle, but CR-Vs have always had a very tight, well-built feeling to them. You have 4-wheel independent suspension. The visibility in the car has also been improved. Honda said that they improved the view area here, I believe, by like 4.5%. And to be honest, CR-V's already had excellent visibility as well. You also have Honda's sensing. Their full suite of driver assistance is going to be standard on all models. The higher trims include things like new features like traffic jam assist and low-speed automatic emergency braking. That's now been included on this Sport Touring trim. And the steering in this car is pretty light, but it's also relatively direct. It basically almost feels like I'm just driving a taller version of the Civic. Even though the chassis, the platform is shared, the CR-V has a couple of structural changes to make this car feel a little bit more befitting of the fact that it's a crossover designed to tow and designed to carry more people. The seats are also comfortable. Honda says that they redesigned the seats in this car. We've got the full leather, heated seats, heated steering wheel, but no ventilated seats. I would have loved to see that option in this car, especially considering the CR-V is their best-selling model, and also no heads-up display and no panoramic sunroof. So those are all features that I think Honda is missing out on, in addition to not offering a plug-in hybrid. Obviously, that would drive the price up of this vehicle up even more, but I feel like there's going to be a good number of people that will be willing to pay it, because if you look at its main competitor, the Toyota RAV4 hybrid, it has all of that tech in it, and it's a little bit more expensive than this car, but it still sells incredibly well because of just how well-rounded the car is. The CR-V definitely feels like it's in that same category, but it also, to me, doesn't have as much choices, and I think that's what may end up holding the CR-V back from taking the RAV4, the sales crown away from the RAV4 and the RAV4 hybrid. I mean, Honda obviously wants to sell more cars. They expect 50% of you who buy a CR-V are going to go for this hybrid model, and I would highly recommend going for the hybrid. After driving the gas model and this model, the hybrid's definitely the one to get in terms of fuel economy, which I'll retest when we have one for a full week. But and in terms of just overall comfort and even just drivability, like these corners right here on this kind of curvier mountain road, the CR-V takes them well. It's definitely not as sporty as a Civic, but it feels like it's built from the same company. It feels like it's designed to be a little bit sportier, and honestly, I'd have to compare a RAV4 XSE to this back to back to see which one's actually sportier. I think the Honda could have better steering feel, but that's kind of something that Honda's always been good at. But overall, it's a nice driving vehicle, and for those of you who have been waiting for the new CR-V simply because you need a reliable, efficient family commuter car and you don't want to buy a RAV4, because let's be honest, there's a lot of those on the road as well, this could certainly be well worth a look. Just make sure you seriously consider the hybrid version. It is better. So with well over 300,000 sales annually here in America, the all-new CR-V is without a doubt a very important model here for Honda. This is the company's best-selling vehicle here in North America, so it's no surprise to me that they didn't want to take too many risks with the redesign. Obviously, they've taken the previous generation and just improved upon it, made the car stronger, made the car stiffer, made the car more safe, and also gave it a huge upgrade in the tech department, because that's where really where the old CR-V was lacking. Now, when I first had a chance to drive the 1.5 turbo EXL, I was pretty disappointed with the overall package simply because I didn't like the way it looked with the base wheels or with the 18-inch wheels, and I also wasn't really impressed with the performance of the 1.5 turbo. I'll have to wait until I actually get one to test back home to see if that is carried over when I have one for a full week. However, after spending the day driving the sport touring version that comes standard with the hybrid powertrain, this is exactly the reason why Honda is claiming that they're expecting CR-V sales to be well over 50% to be the hybrid, because in the sport and sport touring grade, the CR-V looks a lot better with the 18-inch wheels or the 19-inch wheels and the different sportier look of the exterior design. And in terms of the features, this sport touring is packed full of them. The infotainment system is the same one that's out of the Civic with the wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. The seats are comfortable, the interior is spacious, the exterior styling is inoffensive but also a little bit more handsome this year. And in terms of the performance of the hybrid, 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds is perfectly respectable. This should keep up with all of those RAV4 hybrids that you see cluttering the American roads. Now, speaking of which, if you guys are looking to purchase the hybrid version, the EX and EXL is already on sale. The hybrid is heading to dealerships right now as we speak. Honda says they should be arriving this month in October, and they start at around $32,450 for the base sport trim. Now, if you're looking at the pricing of the previous generation, it's actually only about $400 more. However, there's a little bit of a trick there because the old CR-V hybrid came standard with all-wheel drive. Now it's $1,500 extra for all-wheel drive. So if you go for a sport with all-wheel drive, that's going to start $1,500 higher, so around $34,000. This sport touring version is basically fully loaded with all-wheel drive. It starts at $38,650. Add the $1,200 destination, and you're looking at just under $40,000, like $39,940, which makes the CR-V again pretty expensive. But if you look at fully loaded versions of the RAV4 hybrid, that's easily over $40,000. However, keep in mind the fact that the CR-V still lacks features like ventilated seats, a panoramic sunroof, heads-up display, or heated back seats. Those options, if Honda chose to offer them, would easily push this car's price to in the low $40,000 range. I think it's a mistake that they don't. I also think it's a mistake that they don't offer this as a plug-in hybrid, because they offer that in the European market, but for some reason Honda says that they don't think it's going to do well here in the US, which I think is kind of a huge missed opportunity. But with all that said, I do think the CR-V is still a very solid entry, and the hybrid model is the one to get if you're looking at this new generation. But just keep in mind, some competitors offer a few more premium touches, but you will be paying a little bit more for that. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2023 Honda CR-V Sport Touring, of course the CR-V Hybrid. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.